I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ashley.
And welcome to
Red Rum and Rosé.
Today we're drinking boba because it's noon on a Friday and Ashley's also sick.
Very sick.
So
I had wine last night and maybe that's what happened.
I'm sure that's exactly what happened. I just didn't want to rain on your parade, but I think that's why your throat hurt.
But sure,
you also
really
keep drinking coffee and stuff like that.
I like coffee. I can't not have coffee.
But, when you're sick, you gotta do things for yourself.
And then now, with my tooth, I'm trying to eat this boba, the pearls, and I can't do it.
Maybe don't chew on boba and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, well, today we're talking about a tasty topic, cannibalism. So human cannibalism is the act or practice of humans eating the flesh or internal organs of other human beings, in case you needed a definition for cannibals.
Yeah.
There are a few well-known cases of cannibalism, and Ashley, can you think of one or two off the top of your head?
Jeffrey Dahmer. Ed Gein, did he?
I don't know if he ate them.
He skinned them.
Yeah, so another really well-known one is the Donner Party.
Oh,
two different reasons for cannibalism there, but...
And also cannibalism happens in other... little, animals, too, sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, I watched a documentary a long time ago of this, island where, these people would do cannibalism a lot.
In some societies, especially tribal societies, cannibalism is a cultural norm. Consumption of a person from within the same community is called endo-cannibalism. Ritual cannibalism of the recently deceased can be part of the grieving process,
Ew.
Or be seen as a way of guiding the souls of the dead into the bodies of living descendants. What do you mean, ew?
Well, okay,
you don't want to eat your mom after she died?
But, what? How did she die? What if she was, sick and then you're eating?
You got to eat her.
Or it's
Wouldn't you feel comfort, like a hot bowl of chicken noodle soup on a cold winter day?
Oh, God. But,
Except it's your mom instead of chicken.
Her little fingers floating. But, what if they got sick because of, you don't know how they die.
I don't know. They probably don't know either in those little tribal
Oh, my
places.
God. And then, I forgot what I was going to say. Remember in that episode of My Strange Addiction where the girl eats her, dead boyfriend's, ashes?
Oh, ew, yeah.
She, licks her fingers and she's, dipping them in the ashes and
I guess
eats
at the end of the day, that's just ash, though. It's not, eating, you're not, picking up a leg and, nom, 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 nom,
Still gross, though.
On the other hand, exo-cannibalism is the consumption of a person from outside of the community, usually as a celebration of victory against a rival tribe.
Oh.
Both types of cannibalism are fueled by the belief that eating the person's flesh or internal organs will give the cannibal some of the characteristics of the deceased.
That's interesting.
Cannibalism was still practiced in Papua New Guinea as of 2012.
Oh, Lord. No. I don't think I could ever... I feel like if it was me, on a stranded island with someone and it was I had to either eat them or starve to death, I don't know if I could eat them. You know?
So typically cannibalism isn't a societal norm and has only been practiced as a last resort by people suffering from famine.
Which is like the Donner Party.
Yes. So in a semi-recent event, a man from Germany killed and ate the flesh of a willing victim.
Oh, yeah.
As part of a sexual fantasy between the two, but I'm not sure what the victim gets out of that because they died. Yeah. So maybe they just wanted to die.
I think they actually recorded it too. I actually heard this whole story. Yeah. And the guy didn't die originally, at first. It took him a long time. He, bled out.
So maybe that's what he wanted.
He was
he wanted to get chopped up and then watch somebody eat him?
Well, he chopped off his penis and was frying his penis and they were trying to eat it.
I have heard that.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway. All right, let's go into our stories.
Delicious.
My fiance is a big fan of rap and hip-hop, so when I saw a rapper who also happened to engage in cannibalism, I knew I had to cover it.
Wait, a famous rapper?
No.
No. Who the fuck?
It's just a rapper. But still. It was when I typed in cannibals, he popped up, and I was like, oh, I have to do it. Generally, when rappers talk about all the disgusting ways they can inflict bodily harm, it's all in the name of entertainment. But rapper Antron Singleton, better known as his stage name Big Lurch, would take those lyrics to reality when he murdered his 21-year-old roommate, Tynesha Yesayas, and ate parts of her body in April of 2002. Singleton grew up in East Dallas, Texas, and at the age of 7, he began writing poetry. By about 14, he decided to pursue a career in rap and began performing. He started rapping under the stage name G. Spade, but changed his name to Big Lurch, which came from his intimidating stature. Singleton was very slim and 6'7", which was reminiscent of the character Lurch from the Addams Family.
Oh, I didn't even know that was from the... I've never really watched the Addams
Me
Family,
neither,
so I'm like...
But when I was looking him up, I found that out. I was like, okay, sounds good. I mean, at least there's like a reason for his name. During his music career, Singleton worked with such Bay Area rappers as Mac Dre and E40.
What?
And also a lot more, but those were the, big recognizable ones, for me at least, because I don't really listen to rap.
Mm-hmm.
Singleton's music is characterized as horrorcore and gangsta rap, among a few other genres. And I'm sure we've all heard of gangsta rap from well-known rappers such as rap group NWA, but what is horrorcore?
I was about to ask that. I've never heard that before.
Good thing I'm here to tell you. Horrorcore is a subgenre of hip-hop music based on horror-themed and dark lyrical content and imagery. These lyrics often become gruesome, ghoulish, unsettling, or slasher film-esque.
Okay.
Singleton's life would take a turn when on September 16th, 2000, just one day after his birthday, a drunk driver struck his car, which resulted in his neck being broken.
Whoa!
After being released from the hospital, he had trouble walking and was still in a lot of pain. It was at this time that Singleton admitted that he began using PCP to try and control that pain.
Oh, Lord, that is not how you control Get some Vicodin. Something.
So PCP is also known as angel dust, and it's used for its mind-altering effects. It may cause hallucinations, disoriented perceptions of sounds, and violent behavior. Oh. It may also induce feelings of strength, power, and invulnerability. I remember a story someone told me once, and I think this was in high school, about a guy who was super messed up on PCP, and he actually got shot a few times by cops and still wouldn't go down.
Yeah, I've heard multiple times that PCP just makes them like almost superhuman, and it's crazy. I don't is PCP still really popular though nowadays?
Well, PCP began to emerge as a recreational drug in the U.S. in the 60s. In 1978, it was called the country's #1 drug problem, but it actually began declining in the 80s.
Oh, good.
So it's not a super popular one, but
I feel like meth and
pretty problematic
coke
one.
is probably the highest ones.
On April 10th, 2002, a friend went to Tynesha's Los Angeles apartment only to find Tynesha with her chest torn open and a 3-inch blade broken off in her scapula.
Oh, what the fuck?
Tynesha had teeth marks on her face and on her lungs, which had been torn from her chest.
So I'm wondering if, like, this PCP, you know, like how we had that epidemic on bath salts where people were, like, being zombies and eating people's faces. I wonder if that's, like, the same exact
Possibly.
Concept of PCP. Because that's... Oh, God. Oh, my God. The blade in her... Oh, God. Jesus. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Singleton, 25 at the time of the crime, was arrested, and when he was picked up, he was said to be naked, covered in blood, standing in the middle of the street, and looking up at the stars.
Oh, how relaxing.
Singleton was taken in for a medical examination shortly after, where a doctor found human flesh in his stomach that was not his own. Tynesha's boyfriend stated that Tynesha and Singleton had been using PCP the day before the murder. While Singleton was awaiting trial for the murder, Tynesha's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Singleton, Stress Free Records, and Death Row's Back, formerly known as Death Row Records, which was founded by Suge Knight, the DOC, and Dr. Dre, the same label that worked with Snoop Dogg and Tupac.
Mm-hmm.
But Death Row was actually later dropped from the lawsuit after it was determined that the label had no connection to Singleton. The suit stated that the labels had provided Singleton with drugs to encourage him to act out in an extremely violent manner as to make him more marketable as a gangsta rap artist. The The lawsuit claimed that part of what makes gangsta rap artists marketable is the fact that the artist is a participant in violent activities. Singleton had his manager from Stress Free Records as his lawyer. While on trial, the defense argued that Singleton was in a psychotic state due to his use of PCP the night before the murder and had him plead not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of the murder.
You know how long PCP stays in your system for?
I do not. The court ruled that his intoxication and claimed insanity were not satisfactory reasons for committing the crime after a psychiatrist who evaluated Singleton reported that he had no reason to believe Singleton was of unsound mind. However, 3 other doctors concluded that Singleton was insane during the crime. The DA made a motion stating that drug use cannot be used as grounds for insanity plea in California, and the judge granted it. The DA also used his song, "I Did It to You," against him in court. The song starts off by listing off well-known murderers such as Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer. He also raps about murder and torture.
Oh, God. Yeah, he already seems kind of fucked up to begin with and then uses PCP, so it's just kind of like it's just going to add on to that.
On November 7th, 2003, Singleton was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Singleton claims that there was not even proof that he actually committed the crime. He says they started smoking PCP and they kept feeding it to him. The next thing he remembered, he was waking up in jail with a murder conviction looming over him. He says that the house they were in was a dope house with lots of guns, but when the police got there, there were no guns and no drugs. He claims that gangbangers cleaned it out. Tynesha's mother would later go on record to say that she doesn't think that Singleton did it. She believes that Tynesha's boyfriend did it as he was a gang member.
Wait, what? But he had human flesh in his stomach. What the? Are you? Okay. Sorry.
She believes that he was the one who set Singleton up. Tynesha had her bags packed and ready to leave him the day that the murder happened because he had been beating her.
Oof.
Then why does Singleton have human flesh in his stomach?
Exactly. Thank you.
Tynesha's mother believes that after Tynesha's boyfriend took her lungs out, a drugged-out Singleton picked it up thinking that it was a piece of meat. Singleton echoes these claims, saying that they gave him PCP to take advantage of him. The amount of PCP that were shown in Tynesha's and Singleton's throat showed signs that they had not smoked it willingly, and the amount that was in Tynesha's system wouldn't have been able to be smoked. To add to the mystery, there was also bloody fingerprints and footprints in the house that didn't belong to Tynesha or Singleton.
Oh, fuck.
Tooth marks that didn't match his, and a single shoe sitting at the back door. Singleton feels that his manager and lawyer, Milton Grimes, threw him under the bus. He says that Grimes had him plead insanity, knowing that you couldn't use drugs to claim insanity in California if you willingly took the substance that led you to commit the act you were on trial for. He did not bring decent clothing for Singleton to wear in court, and much of what was stated above wasn't covered in court. Tynesha's mother has actually visited Singleton in jail. She told him she knew he was set up, and she had forgiven him. In 2004, his only studio album was released. Its cover art is controversial, as it shows Big Lurch holding a skull on a tray.
Oh, Jesus.
Though he had no say on what the cover art was.
I was about to say, he's milking this shit now.
Singleton was featured in a 2011 documentary, as well as another show in 2013. He is currently incarcerated in California.
Yeah, I read that he was like 40-something years old now. You know, I've heard of a couple cases like this where they have all this other evidence that they don't bring into court, and I just don't understand why, like, defense lawyers don't.
Well, that's why he thinks that he threw him under the bus.
Some bullshit. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if it was a setup. It could have just, maybe someone else was there when it happened. Maybe there were more people, you know, who were involved in high and then they freaked out and fucking left. You never know, like after the fact, and he just took the fall for it because he was there, you know.
And I read somewhere that despite the description of him being covered in blood, he actually wasn't as covered in blood as they made it seem to be. Like, maybe he had, like, blood on him a little bit.
Yeah.
I also saw one thing about there potentially being a dog in the house, and the dog was never mentioned. Also, the actual murder weapon being a scooter, and there was a scooter found with a bloody handprint. But there wasn't that much on this case, which is why I'm going first, because this ended up being so short, but I already did the work for it. But there wasn't too much. I mean, I found a lot of stuff on Reddit, and then there was like one article in Wikipedia. And then I tried to watch a interview with him, but it was such poor quality that I couldn't sit there and watch it. It was like cell phone interview because he's in jail.
Yeah.
So that's Big Lurch.
So, between the years of 1971 and 1990, a serial killer was on the loose this happens all in Russia. So, I'm going to
Ooh, fun name.
I'm going to butcher.
You made fun of me for the Romanian names, and now it's my turn.
Yeah, so I'm sorry in advance because I just don't know how to pronounce any of this stuff. There was a serial killer on the loose in Shakhty and Rostov-on-Don, Russia.
It's probably like Rostov.
Maybe you should say it. Maybe you should read my story. And do like a little accent with it too. So Andrei Chikatilo.
Andrei.
There you go. Yes. He was a school teacher. And
do you not watch 90 Day Fiancé? Come on, there's like a bunch of Russians and like Eastern European things going on there.
How many? There's only like 2
Andrei.
Russians. Well, yeah, him, but the other?
On the newest season, the girl is from like Volgograd. Something like that.
She's gonna,
Volgograd.
every time I say something, she's gonna read and, pronounce it for me. Andrei Chikatilo, who was a school teacher, is said to have murdered more than 50 young people in the Soviet Union. He is also known for partially eating some of his victims. Let's get started with Andrei's early life. Andrei Chikatilo was born on October 16th, 1936.
Every time you say Chikatilo, I think of Chiquitita, tell me the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia.
That's why I'm laughing. Okay.
Well, that's how you say his name.
They just don't say his last name anymore.
Okay, Andrei, Big A, was born on October 16th, 1936, in the Ukraine state of the USSR. During this time...
Now it's back in the USSR.
During this time, there was a ton of famine caused by Stalin's collectivization of agriculture. What was happening was that Stalin implemented a policy for individual landholdings and labor to be integrated into collectively controlled and state-controlled farms. Andrei's parents were collective farm laborers and lived in a single-room hut. They weren't paid wages for their work, but instead they were able to have a plot of land behind their hut to cultivate. Because of this, the family rarely had enough food. Andrei claims his family often had to eat grass and leaves in place of food sometimes.
Oh.
Yeah, so...
Why eat grass and leaves when you can eat people?
Oh, yeah,
I wonder if that's what's gonna happen.
All throughout Andrei's childhood, his mother used to tell him stories of his older brother who, before Andrei was born, had been kidnapped and cannibalized at the age of 4 by neighbors who were starving. You didn't think it was gonna come up that quick, huh?
No.
There was never confirmation of this actually happening, though, so...
Probably happened, though.
Possibly. When the Soviet Union entered the Second World War, Andrei's father was drafted by the Red Army, leaving Andrei under his mother's care.
Oh.
During this time, Andrei had witnessed bombings and shootings from the Nazi occupying Ukraine. Andrei's hut had once been burned down to the ground while him and his mother watched.
Oh.
Sad. Andrei and his mother would share a bed, but because Andrei was a bedwetter, his mother would beat him and verbally abuse him every time this incident would happen. I don't understand why they shared a bed, because, so before Andrei's dad left for the army, there had to have been 2 beds, because the 2 parents would share a bed and then he would share a bed, so I don't know why Andrei would sleep. I guess he was a kid, so it's like...
Well, the hut burned down.
Yeah.
Maybe they lost the beds.
Well, they rebuilt the hut, and yeah, so I guess, yeah. That makes sense. Jackie coming in with the facts.
For your story.
For my story. In 1943, Andrei's sister Tatiana was born. Since Andrei's father wasn't around, it is speculated that his sister was a result of Andrei's mother being raped by a German soldier. Keep wanting to say shoulder instead of soldier. Yeah. And since they shared a single-room hut, it is believed Andrei had witnessed this rape. So already a fucked up childhood. So it's already in the making of just a serial killer.
All we're missing is a head injury.
Oh, right? Yeah. Andrei was enrolled in school in 1944, where he received a ton of bullying from classmates. Just add on to that shit, right? They would mock him for being so weak from starvation, and he had even fainted at school before.
Damn.
Apparently his stomach, you know, like when kids, they get the bloated stomach because they're from starvation?
Yeah.
So he would have that.
Oh.
Because of this, Andrei was a very timid child. Although he was an excellent student and would read and study all of the time. During Andrei's puberty, he had discovered he had chronic impotence, which means he couldn't get an erection, which made him have more self-hate and made him even more awkward in social settings. So not only is he, like, starving and his mother beats him and, like, berates him and get raped and all this shit. Now he's also has just, like, erectile dysfunction. Andrei had his first crush at the age of 17, but was so nervous around the girl that he never asked her out on a date. Within the same year, though, Andrei had wrestled with his sister's 11-year-old friend and had ejaculated from the excitement of the girl struggling to get free from his grasp.
No.
So already getting a little weird.
How old? Oh, he's around 17, because this is his crush. Okay.
After his graduation from high school, Andrei tried to get into Moscow State University, but didn't have high enough grades and wasn't accepted. So instead of school, he had moved to the city of Kursk, where he worked in manual labor for 3 months before enrolling in school again. In 1955, Andrei had his first serious girlfriend, but after several times of not being able to have intercourse due to his condition, he was broken up with after 18 months together.
Dang.
So, I know this is going to sound mean, but I'm surprised that she waited to break up with him 18 months after the
Maybe
fact.
it just wasn't that important to her until she realized that it was, like, an issue that he had.
Possibly. Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, I don't know, back in the 50s, it could be more of, like, a, you know, people aren't sleeping with each other.
Yeah, maybe they, like,
openly.
waited a little bit longer than the culture nowadays. After 2 years, Andrei had completed his schooling, but then was drafted into the Soviet Army. Andrei was in the Army from 1957 until 1960, and was known to have unblemished work. Andrei had moved back in with his parents, and there he had another relationship with a divorcee. The relationship only lasted 3 months due to his condition again. So I feel bad that he had to go through it, like, again, but what makes matters worse is that the woman had asked her friends, like her girlfriends, how he could overcome the condition. So all of his peers then knew that he couldn't perform.
Poor guy.
I know. So it's like, really? Like, it's probably something you shouldn't share. But I mean, I know that I would probably tell you guys, like, oh god, this guy can't perform. I mean, I know what I have told you guys. So, because of girls talking behind his back, Andrei first tried to hang himself, but ultimately just packed up his bags and moved away to Rostov-on-Don. I don't know how to... Do you want to try?
No.
Once he got there, he had rented an apartment and had gotten a job as a communications engineer. Shortly after, Tatiana, his sister, moved in with Andrei for 6 months until
Why'd you put quotes around his sister?
I don't know. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah, because
they didn't see.
I know,
they would have never known.
I see, so I'm wondering if there was more context, because you said his sister in quotes, which sounds like it's not his sister, and something's gonna happen with her. Oh my god. You're like those people who on Facebook like to put quotes around words that don't need quotes.
I don't do that.
Please don't, in quotes, clean the bathroom. And they mean to, like, have, like, bolding, but they put it in quotes. So strange.
I don't think I've ever done that.
I know, but I'm saying that you are like those people
right now.
Where you're putting an inappropriate quote around.
But it was just hand movement. I didn't type quotes. I just put little, I don't know, maybe I want to have bunny fingers. I don't know.
Got weirder. Okay, go on.
Shortly after, Tatiana, with no quotes, moved in with Andre for 6 months.
I hope somebody's name doesn't have quotes around it. So is her name Tatiana? Is it not Tatiana?
Let's call her Tati. So she moved in with her brother for 6 months until she got married to a local boy. Then she moved in with her in-laws. Since his sister felt so bad about Andre being so shy around women, Tatiana wanted to help her brother find a wife. Andre was then introduced to Theodosia, a woman his sister had known. In 1963, the two married after only 2 weeks of knowing each other. So it was kind of like an arranged marriage, to be honest.
Ooh, so she didn't get to know about all that.
Theodosia, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Theo knew of Andre's condition, and they had agreed to try and have children by Andre ejaculating externally, and then he would push the semen inside her vagina.
I wish they could see the hand motion
that I just did. It's like shoving it in.
Like a stop hand, like a high five hand. Pushing.
And so when I was reading this, I just automatically thought of that scene in Don't Breathe with the turkey baster. And I'm like, why didn't they do it that way? Because that, like, doing it with the turkey baster would have been so much cleaner, I feel like, and more, like, accurate, because you could just put it in there, you know, and...
Yeah. Anyway. There was a lot more things that went on in that movie after that, too, that I just don't like to think about. So, apparently their trick actually worked, though, because... Did it work, or was Theo sleeping around?
Ooh, yeah.
I don't see how, pushing...
Shoving that shit in there.
Ooh, don't do that. That was worse. Oh, no. Okay.
Apparently, their trick... We can't have boba together anymore and record because this is what happens. Apparently, their trick worked because they had a daughter in 1965 and then a son in 1969. So, Andre once again decided to return to school and study Russian literature and philology. He was able to get his degree in 1970.
Philology?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I said. I don't know. So, I tried to look it up, and then I forgot what it meant, and I just really... This is really long already, so... She's looking it up for you guys, so we'll get back to that maybe. Oh. What is it?
A branch of knowledge that deals with the structure, historical development, and relationships of a language or languages.
Well, there you go.
Like linguistics?
So, that's what he studied. And he got his degree in 1970 and became a teacher 1 year later. Even though Andre was very smart, he had no way to maintain discipline in his classrooms and was mocked by his students. And I remember when I was a freshman in high school, I had a choir teacher, and she was...
Miss Tibbetts?
No. This was when I went to Willow Glen still. Oh. Shout out Willow Glen High School. What? Yeah, so I had this choir teacher my first year in high school. She was really weird, but very nice, but also very quiet. Like, she didn't know how to be up front and, like, put her foot down. And I remember the seniors in my class would just... not listen to her and, like, talk back and be rude.
Was this the one you were talking about, how the girl said that she should lay down and sing?
Yeah, because she didn't want to stand up, and the lady was... And then, so she says, it's better for you to actually sing while laying down. And instead of the teacher being like, I told you to stand up, she agreed. She was like, yes, I know it is better to... And I was like, no, that's not how you do it. You don't agree with them. You just tell them, get the fuck up.
Yeah. Like, anyway. I don't care if it's better. I said to stand.
Yeah, so... students would walk all over her all the time. So, such an awkward situation, and I feel really bad for him that, like, literally almost every single person in his life has now mocked him. In 1973, Andre committed his first sexual assault with a 15-year-old student in his class. He had groped her breasts and vagina, and ultimately ejaculated while she had struggled to get away.
Oh, no.
Within months later, Andre had locked another student of his in his classroom and sexually assaulted her as well. With both of these assaults, Andre was never punished. He was even caught fondling himself in the presence of his students by fellow teachers, and that also went unpunished.
So did they just never tell somebody?
Yeah, they just kept it to themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. After complaints, though, from students and teachers increased, Andre was told by the principal that he should resign or be fired. So he left his job and found another teaching job at a different school in 1974, and there he worked for 4 years.
If he would have just hung himself all the time ago, all these people would still be...
Right? So the teachers and students allowed this to happen for 1 whole year before the principal was like...
Well, we can't blame the students.
Yeah, but
that are
the
being...
fellow teachers, come
yeah,
on now.
the teachers, but not the students who it's happening to.
Yeah, well.
They're young.
Yeah.
But the teachers should have definitely said something, unless all those teachers were fuckfaces, too, and maybe doing the same thing.
Oh, God's sake. You never know, though. In 1978, because of staff cutbacks, Andre lost his job and moved to Shakti. Shakti.
That reminds me of something, too.
It reminds me of Shock Top.
No, not for me. I don't know what it reminds me of.
So he moved there, and he found yet another teaching job, because he is such an excellent teacher. Andre ended up stopping his teaching career in 1981 after allegations of child molestation of his students of both sexes.
Oh.
Yeah. Instead of teaching, he began his career as a supply clerk for a factory that provided material for construction. With this job, Andre would have to travel all over the Soviet Union. Oh. It's still good?
No, probably not. It's like that one highway where like the truckers would pass through and they found all those bodies.
Yep. Yeah.
Can see where this is going.
Now that we have the background of Andre, we can get started into this horrible murder spree. We are time traveling back to 1978, when he had first moved to Shakti after he lost his second teaching job. On December 22nd, Andre lured a 9-year-old girl named Yelena to an older house that he had purchased in secret. So his wife didn't know nothing.
Oh, I forgot he was married.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing all this molestation of young kids already. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he purchased this old house out in the boonies in secret. There he had tried to rape Yelena, but was unable to keep an erection. As Yelena struggled to get away, Andre had strangled and stabbed her 3 times in the abdomen, which caused him to finally ejaculate. He then threw her body in a nearby river, where her body was discovered 2 days later. She was 9 years old.
Poor baby.
Even though there were numerous things that linked Andre to Yelena's murder, like blood near the small house he had purchased, neighbors claiming Andre had been in the house the night of the murder, and a witness describing someone who looked like Andre talking to Yelena by the bus stop, Andre didn't get caught. Instead, a 25-year-old man named Alexander, Krevenko? Alexander was arrested for the crime because he had just served time for a similar crime.
Oh, damn.
Although Alexander had an alibi for the night of the murder, police found blood on his wife's clothes that matched Yelena's blood type, but also his wife's. So they were just kind of...
Well, it doesn't sound like this Alexander guy is a good dude anyway, but, like, he shouldn't serve for somebody else's crime, but he should probably just still be in prison.
So because of this, because before his alibi was him and his friends and his wife all stayed in that night. And so that was his alibi. And because
never a good alibi.
I know, right? But because of the police, wanting to put this on him, they pressured his wife to change her story because they threatened her she'd be an accomplice to murder.
Oh.
So she
probably thought he was a shithead anyway, so it's like, whatever.
Yeah, so she changed her story, and Alexander was ultimately tried in 1979 and executed in 1983.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But you said he committed a similar crime.
Yeah, he did rape and murder another child before.
That's fine.
So, I mean,
okay.
He kind of deserved it, but yeah. After this first murder of Andre's, he could only get sexual gratification by stabbing women and children to death.
Oh.
On September 3rd, 1981, Andre claimed his next victim. Larissa was a 17-year-old boarding school student. While she was standing by a bus stop, Andre had lured her into the forest by telling her they would be drinking and relaxing. As soon as they were secluded, they began to struggle while Andre threw the girl down and tore at her clothes, trying to have intercourse. Once again, Andre couldn't achieve an erection and began shoving mud in Larissa's mouth before beating and strangling her to death. Because he didn't have a knife, Andre mutilated her body by tearing at her flesh with his teeth and bit off her nipple. I
honestly forgot that this was a cannibal episode. So, as you said, tore at her, like, with his mouth, I, cringed and then remembered what we were doing.
Cannibals, baby. So he covered her body with leaves and newspaper and went on his way. Larissa's body...
Leaves and newspaper.
Leaves and newspaper. And Larissa's body was discovered the next day. A short 9 months later, on June 12th, 1982, Andre had to travel by bus to buy some vegetables. Having to change buses, he decided to continue traveling by foot, which I don't understand. I would rather just take the bus. Mm-hmm. This is where he encountered a 13-year-old girl who was walking alone back home from a shopping trip. Once the path they were both on was shielded by passerbyers, Andre attacked. He dragged the girl into some undergrowth and tore off her clothes before stabbing her to death. When her body was finally found on June 27th, the medical examiner found 22 stab wounds on her head, neck, chest, and genitals.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. After this victim, Andre decided he didn't want to try and resist his urge to kill.
That was resisting back then? Oh,
yeah,
I see.
Yeah. Well, he waited 9 whole months. So between July and September of 1982, he killed 5 more people, ages ranging from 9 to 18. He fell into a pattern of approaching his victims who were runaways or vagrants at bus stops or railroads. He would then lure them into a secluded area and kill them by stabbing, beating, or strangulation, and often disemboweling them. Medical examiners know...
Disemboweling? Taking out their bowels?
Organs. So what that means is,
No.
Yeah.
Oh, because...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez.
Medical examiners noticed he tended to gouge out his victims' eyes with a knife.
Oh. Oh, no.
I know.
Oh, no.
She's getting the creepy crawlies.
Or like grapes, maybe, imagine. Squishy grapes.
Yeah, because I never found the victim's eyeballs, so I wonder.
Eat them.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Andre's adult victims, who were women, were often prostitutes or homeless. Mm-hmm. He would first try to have sex with them, but when he couldn't get an erection, some of the women would mock him, sending him into a fury.
Didn't that happen with somebody else, too? Another serial killer laughed at him, or it was like a TV show or something. I don't know.
That's probably
I wonder if he would have been able to have intercourse with them, if he still would have followed through with killing them.
Yeah, I don't know. Because, I mean, still at an early age, he was already, like, ejaculating from girls, like...
That's true.
Trying to get away. Yeah, so...
But I wonder it's because he wants to ejaculate, so he could have without the killing. I wonder.
Yeah.
Because it's like he tries to have sex with them first, then he can't, so then he's like, well, I guess I'll kill you, and then I'll ejaculate.
Yeah. This is why you don't mock people for their inabilities to perform in bed.
Well, when the person's attacking you, I can see why you would make fun of them. But then he killed them.
The children he killed were of both sexes, and he would lure them very easily with different tricks, like telling them there was a shortcut, or he had candy. So don't ever tell your children not to take candy from strangers. I don't understand this.
Haven't you seen, though, there was a YouTuber, he got the consent of the parents first, of course, but he went to a park and they were filming an episode where he talked to the parent and said, do you talk to your kid about not following strangers, not doing this with strangers? Like, oh, of course, yes. And he's like, well, which one's your kid? Can we try this experiment out? There's cameras around, da-da-da-da. And so he'll go up to the kid and be like, hey, like, I have a puppy, it's just over in my car, something like that, and he'll talk to the kid. And there were a couple kids that still walked away.
Yeah.
And so the parent was just like, I'm like getting chills. Mm-hmm. The parents then sat down with their kid again, and it's like, we've talked about this, don't ever leave with somebody you don't know, even if they say that they have these things that you want, they don't have them.
Yeah. So, well, I also saw a similar thing where the parents knew, but the kids were home alone, and a guy went up to the house and being like, hey, like, I'm a friend of your mom's, can I just wait for her inside? And a lot of them open up the door and just let them in. I feel
like it's almost a really good test to do to your kids, just in general, like, yeah, you can tell them all you want, but what are they going to do in a real situation? And don't you want the real situation to be one that you control rather than one where you don't expect it to happen? Like, maybe it's an experiment you do before you leave your kid alone for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, or you can do what my mom did and just make me watch Law and Order SVU when I was growing up.
I watched America's Most Wanted.
Oh, that show still creeps me out, though, sometimes, because they're, like, not caught, and you're like, ah! Mm-hmm. Yeah, so... educate your children, because this is just ridiculous that this happens it's like, I know this was back in the day, but this happens all the time still.
I mean, back in the day too, if you didn't come home, it was fine. Mm-hmm. And I remember my dad saying that, like, he would go out and just ride bikes with his friends all day, and to let his parents know that he was fine at the end of the day is he'd, like, put a quarter in the phone booth, let it ring once, hang up, because then you get your quarter back, and they would know that it was him.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Times were different.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. After he would lure the children away, he would then overpower the children and tie their hands behind their backs. He would then shove mud or foam in their mouths to muffle their screams while he murdered them. On December 11, 1982, Andre encountered a 10-year-old girl named Olga who was riding the bus to her parents' house. He persuaded her to get off the bus with him, and he had then lured her to a cornfield where he stabbed her over 50 times, ripped open her chest, and cut out her bowels and uterus. This time a witness on the bus had told police they saw a middle-aged man walk away with Olga. So now they have a kind of an idea of, like, okay, well, we're looking at an older gentleman. Mm-hmm. But still, the police weren't really actively doing anything at this time. Ridiculous. Andre did not kill after this until June 1983.
How long was that?
So this happened in December 11th, so about 6 months later.
Okay.
This time he had murdered a 15-year-old girl named Laura and left her body by a railway platform. By September, another 5 victims fell to the hands of Andre. Because of all the similarities between the murders, the authorities finally knew for a fact a serial killer was walking amongst them.
After what, like 15?
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Because of the disembowelment of the bodies, police thought it was a satanic group or a person harvesting organs. Possibly the killer was someone who was insane or even homosexual. That's what they put. I'm like, why does it have to be gay?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand that. So, yeah. But it's always, like we said in another podcast episode, it's always a satanic group.
Yeah.
Always. Literally always. Don't understand that.
I'm like, I think the people upstairs moved. And if they have a 2-bedroom like we do, then upstairs should be quiet. No more satanic
thank God.
sacrifices.
So tired of them. In September of 1983, several men who were mentally ill confessed to the murders after harsh interrogations. But since bodies were still showing up, they were forced to let the men go. On October 30th, 1983, a 19-year-old prostitute was discovered who had been killed just 3 days prior. What was weird about this victim was that her mutilations aligned with all the other murders, except her eyes hadn't been gouged out like all the rest of them had been.
Maybe they didn't look tasty.
Just 2 months later, on December 27th, a 14-year-old boy named Sergei was lured off of a train and murdered. Andre had emasculated the boy, stabbed him over 70 times, and gouged out his eyes before disemboweling the body.
When they say emasculated, I'm assuming that was a penis chop-off motion that Ashley made.
Yeah. In January and February of 1984, Andre had killed another 2 women, and on March 24th, he had lured a 10-year-old boy named Dmitri away from a stamp kiosk. Again, this time, Andre was witnessed walking with the boy, and a detailed description was given to police. When Dmitri's body was found 3 days later, police also found footprints and semen that belonged to Andre.
Ooh. Is this a large town? Where did they move to?
He was in Shakhty and also in Rostov-on-Don or whatever. But he also would travel sometimes.
Oh, right, I forgot he traveled.
Or taking the bus somewhere.
Because I'm like, if this is a small city in Russia, how did people not just be like, oh, it's Andre?
Right. May 25th, Andre then killed a mother and her 10-year-old daughter in a wooded area. The twist on this was that the victim had known Andre for several years.
Ooh.
Within the next 2 months, Andre had killed another 3 women and a 13-year-old boy. At the end of this, Andre had been fired from his job due to allegations of theft, but was able to obtain another job fairly quickly doing the exact same thing. As you can see, Andre hadn't been slowing down at all.
Nope.
In the first week of August, Andre had killed 2 women, one 16 and the other 17.
How do you have so much time on your hands?
So August 2nd, he killed the 16-year-old, and then August 7th, he killed the 17-year-old.
Man.
And the 17-year-old victim had suffered 39 stab wounds, gouged out eyes, and he had disemboweled her. He had also excised her upper lip within her mouth. Then August 15th, Andre had killed another girl of age 10, and 2 weeks later, you guessed it, another victim. This time an 11-year-old boy who had been castrated, eyes gouged, and found on the banks of the same river he had dumped his first victim at.
Whoa.
And then September 6th, Andre then killed a young librarian. So, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of murders. It was very exhausting having to go through all of this. And we still have more.
But wait.
There's more. Finally, some headway into the investigation. On September 13th, 1984, Andre had been surveillanced by some undercover cops.
At this point, how long has he been killing?
So he started in 1978. So he started his like petty crimes in 1971, like his little assaults.
But then his first killing,
his first murder was 1978, and so now we're at 1984.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Andre had been surveillanced by some undercover cops. They witnessed him try to talk to women all over town and lure them away. When the police arrested Andre for his weird behavior, they had found a knife, rope, and a jar of Vaseline.
If you could arrest people on weird behavior, I think you'd be life in prison.
I am pretty weird. Yeah. At least I'm not trying to, like, lure fucking people away into the woods.
No, it was just the way you said it, so it was really funny.
Yeah. I would be put away for life.
What's crazy is that he's killing so many women, but it sounds like he's still spending time trying to find almost the right woman. But maybe it's not the right woman, it's just like whoever will walk away with me. But it still sounds like it's rather time consuming. Yeah.
I don't know how he has all this time and be able to do his job and be a husband.
Like with BTK, didn't at first they think that it couldn't be somebody with a job because who would have the time to do all this? But he worked and had a family and everything. So I don't know, if you're really dedicated,
if you're passionate about something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. While being held at the police station, Andre's past had come to light, plus his appearance was spot on to the description police had of the killer. They had taken Andre's blood type, which was type A, and compared that to the semen sample, which they had wrote down as type AB. And I had no clue that you could get blood type from semen. I had never heard of that. And I was like, well, that's weird. I don't know. But since it didn't match because his blood type was A and the semen was AB, Andre was discounted on being the killer and was only charged for his theft from his previous work. After serving just 3 months of jail time, Andre was back on the streets.
And they didn't notice that the killings stopped for 3 months?
Well, remember that sometimes he waited like 6 months to kill
but
again.
it sounded like recently he stopped waiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you are right, though, because, like, within, like, the first 2 weeks of August, it was, like,
he waited, like,
tons
8 months, then he kind of waited, like, 6 months, then he waited, like, a month, and then it was just, like, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, so he was back on the streets.
Okay.
After his release, Andre kept low and didn't kill again until August of 1985.
And how long was that?
So he was arrested September 13th, 1984, and then he served 3 months of jail time.
Oh, and then he waited how long, though, after being released?
So he was released September, October, November, December. He was released in December, and he didn't kill until August.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, granted that was only 8 months. Look if I kept reading instead of thinking about it, I wrote it down, because I actually had a feeling you were going to ask, and then I'm silly. I still counted on my fingers. On a business trip to Moscow, Andre had met a woman who was 18 named Natalia. Andre had lured Natalia from the railway to the woods, where he tied her up and stabbed her 38 times, then strangled her to death. A few weeks later, about 4, Andre killed another woman. After her murder, a manhunt ensued. Andre followed the investigation closely and kept his urges subsided. For a whole year, Andre kept quiet, but by August 1986, a body of a young woman was found buried with the same mutilations as all of the other victims, disemboweled and all.
Buried her?
Yeah, because he was trying to be more careful, he actually buried her. Still not a very good job, but definitely a lot better than what he had been doing.
Leaves in newspaper.
She also had one breast removed and her eyes cut out. In 1987, Andre killed 3 more times. He made sure that each kill was when he was on a business trip elsewhere. This time he had killed 2 12-year-old boys and then a 16-year-old vocational student. 1988 rolls around and guess what? 3 more victims. The first victim was a woman who he had lured away from a train station. He then bound her hands, stuffed dirt in her mouth, and then severed her nose from her face. He then stabbed her, then beat her to death with a slab of concrete. However, he didn't disembowel her. throwing police off. I don't know why he severed her nose.
Little snack for the road.
It's so cartilagey. You would like that. He went on to kill a 9-year-old boy whose mutilations matched the killer's MO. 1 month later, a 15-year-old boy was Andre's next victim. He, too, had been emasculated and suffered 30 stab wounds. Andre took an 8-month break and killed his next victim on March 1st, 1989. This murder was ballsy, because Andre had murdered a 16-year-old girl, dismembered her, then tried to hide her remains in the sewage system in his own daughter's vacant apartment.
What the heck?
Yeah, I don't understand that. But this victim wasn't linked to the case since her body was dismembered, unlike the other victims. Between May and August 1989, yet another 4 victims fell to Andre, but only 2 were linked with the case.
But it's like, you thought this guy maybe was killing all these people. Then a body winds up in his daughter's sewage system.
You would think that you would put surveillance on his ass.
Probably bring him back in, and then maybe look at where he's supposed to be traveling for work. But also back then, the database of crimes weren't that good. But I feel like he's really leaving a trail.
Right? And so that's why it's like, I feel like the police were just, I don't know.
But it just, it's Russia, for one, so I don't know much about their, justice
and it's also,
system.
in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and, even here, there wasn't a good way to track crimes like that, and that's why people got away with so much more stuff back then.
Yeah. January 14th, 1990, Andre lured an 11-year-old boy away from a theater. He had promised the boy that he'd show him Western films. He then stabbed the boy brutally and emasculated him. 7 weeks go by, and Andre then kills a 10-year-old boy. He was able to lure him away from a train station. His disemboweled body was found the next day. So I find it crazy and ridiculous that almost all of his murder victims had been lured away from train stations and bus stops, and I don't understand.
I was about to say, why are there so many children alone at train stops?
I don't know.
What are they doing? Is that how they have to get to school? Because I know in places like New York, I think kids do have to take subways and stuff to school, so I'm wondering if that's just how the cities are set up in Russia.
Possibly. So, I just don't understand, how... because I feel like if children and women are going missing from multiple spots, that are, train stations or bus stops, you would think that the police would try to put,
Well, if he's traveling and it's, let's say he killed 2 people at a train stop in Bakersfield, then went to Fresno and killed another person at a train stop, and then went to Anaheim and killed a person at a train stop, it's not like they're going to be train stop killer in Southern California. It's not really going to, raise those kind of flags, especially in a time where the crimes aren't being linked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think when it's just, one murder at a train stop, somebody might be person stabbed at BART, and then you move on, you don't look for crimes at other train stops.
Yeah. By August of 1990, another 9 victims had been tied to the serial killer, and yet Andre is still not caught. Finally, the police start catching on, it seems, and decide to put uniformed police officers in the areas where the killer was known to strike.
Nice.
They were trying to discourage the killer to hunt at these locations, but I would have put undercover, not uniformed.
Yeah, well...
Because, then you could...
But then, if you don't know who it is, and there's too many people around, and he doesn't know that there's cops there, he might still take somebody.
Yeah, but then they could, if he's acting weird and they're seeing that he's trying to lure someone away, or, trying to...
What if you miss it? Have you been to a subway station? It's so busy.
No, I've never been to a subway.
Yeah, it's really busy. I think it might be hard to tell.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe they just didn't want him to be there at all.
Possibly. October 30th, 1990, police found the body of a 16-year-old boy who had been stabbed 27 times and castrated. He also had the tip of his tongue cut off, and his left eye had been stabbed. Andre then lured another 16-year-old boy from a train station, which, by the way, was a train station under surveillance, and killed him by stabbing him 40 times in the forest nearby.
So I guess it doesn't really matter at all.
It doesn't really matter. On November 6th, 1990, Andre killed a 22-year-old woman, but this time he had been observed returning to the railway to wash his face and hands. He also had grass stains on his clothes. He looked extremely suspicious because he also had an injury on his hand, but had a red smear on his cheek. After this last victim was found, they were able to pinpoint that Andre had been working in these certain areas where a lot of victims were killed. The police finally put surveillance on Andre. He had been observed trying to talk to women and children. Okay. Also, he would carry a jar of beer with him, possibly to lure his victims with alcohol.
It's weird, a jar of beer. I just imagine, like, a mason jar.
Yeah.
Somebody being like, hey, you want some beer? And it's like, ew, is that beer or pee in your mason jar?
So Andre was finally arrested for the second time. Andre had claimed he was innocent and said he had already been investigated, but further investigation of his body, they found a human bite mark on his fingers.
Ooh.
Also searching through his possessions, they found a knife and rope. They also took another sample of his blood. Again, the blood was tested with his semen, but his blood type was A and the semen was type AB. They soon found out, however, that Andre's semen was actually type AB, and his blood was A. So he was a perfect match all along. Mm-hmm. Throughout questioning, Andre continued to deny all charges. Finally, though, on November 29th, 1990, Andre broke down crying, confessing to the murders they were linking him to. Andre then gave descriptive recounts of each murder.
Damn.
He had claimed that the victim's cries, the blood, and the agony gave him a relaxation and a certain pleasure. Andre had also stated that he often tasted the victim's blood and flesh, claiming it gave him chills and he would shake all over.
Oh.
Can you imagine? Like, just him bloody and just, like, convulsing. Freaked me out.
Gross.
He also chewed on a uterus of the victim and the testicles of his male victims. He confessed to swallowing the nipples and tongues of some of his other victims. Following his statements, Andre was charged with 53 murders, even though he had confessed to killing 56. During Andre's psych evaluation, they did notice that he suffered from psychological problems. Like, no shit. Mm-hmm. He killed over 50 fucking people. Yeah, of course he's gonna have psychological issues. And during Andre's trial, he played up to his psych eval and tried to make it seem like he was criminally insane so he wouldn't get the death penalty. He even pulled down his pants and underwear during his trial to play up the role.
No, sir.
Finally, after a long trial, Andre was convicted of 52 murders and was sentenced to death. And the way the death penalty worked back then, I don't know if it still works that way in Russia, but back then, they would have a firing squad, and they would take the person outside and shoot the prisoner to death, normally just a bullet behind one of the ears.
That doesn't sound too bad.
No, and I feel like that's way more cost-effective.
Better than a hanging.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, I'm like, why are we going through all these, like, also with lethal injection, why don't you just take him out back and just shoot him? I don't know. It would just make more sense to me. Anyways, this happened to Andre, though, on February 14th, 1991, right before I was born. A lot of criticism was put on the police force for allowing Andre to continue with his murder spree for so long. And I think that if the police had been a bit smarter, not as many people would have died.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the case of cannibal Andre Chikatilo. Chikatilo. Yeah.
Oh.
Long one. Sorry that we've been gone, because to be honest, I've been lazy.
Samesies. Well, and then also, you, like, I think you traveled somewhere, right?
I've been traveling a lot.
And then every time we planned to do this, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, like, in 2 days I'm traveling to Texas for 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
maybe we'll just have to do 2 weeks worth of research, like 2 stories. So, we plan on doing child killers.
Child killers, which I always I'm like, if I say child killers, do people think that killers killing children, or do they actually think of child killers? Because we're actually
Children who kill.
Children who kill is what we are doing next time. I can't say next week because that's not true. So next time you tune in, whenever that is.
And then I don't know what we should do the time after that.
Yeah, I mean, we could always do women.
No, we should do a Christmas-themed one.
I'm down because I love Christmas.
I love Christmas horror movies.
I wonder if there's Christmas-themed...
I'm sure somebody's...
Murders. I don't know if I've heard of one before.
Well, I mean, Jean-Benet died
during Christmas
Eve.
Yeah.
But that's too much to cover, and I don't want to cover it.
No, I would never want to do that. Fuck no. Yeah. We'll figure it out. So we'll do children killers, and then we'll do
something having to do with the holidays.
Because
maybe it could just be holidays if you can't find like a I'm sure there's a lot of family members who kill each other during Thanksgiving. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, like,
and
a
then
lot
blame it on the
of
deep
accidents happening
fryer.
around there. Yeah. He choked on a turkey bone.
Okay, well,
All
have
right.
a great Thanksgiving, guys, and we'll see you next
Goodbye.
time.